So welcome to our afternoon sessions. This session is so you want to work at a football club, and we are proudly supported by executives in Sport Group. I'll let a few more people drift in. If you guys want to come a little bit closer so we're not spread out so much, that would be great. Thank you. So welcome everybody. Firstly, can I just thank EISG for their kind support for this session. My name is Lungi. You may have heard a little bit about me during one of the breakouts this morning, so thank you for joining us in that. For those of you who don't know who I am, I have worked in football for nearly a decade now. Started working out at Charlton Athletic, and one of these ladies on the panel actually used to be my line manager, so I'll introduce her in a bit. But I started out at Charlton, and I'm now the Chief Operating Officer at Birmingham City Football Club, where I look after the women's team as well as safety operations across both company sites in terms of our training ground and our stadium as well. I'm also a very, very proud director for Women in Football, and I've done this for 5 years now, since 2018. As you know, we are active on social media today, and if you haven't already been posting, please join the conversation by using our hashtag #WithBeInspired and hashtag Women in Football. If you already haven't got your phone on silent, if you could just switch it onto silent for us, that would be great. I hope this session will be very interactive. I'm going to take it in turns to introduce the people on our panel today, and then we'll ask some questions, and then we'll also have plenty of time at the end for you guys to ask any questions that you might have. So if you could think of some questions, that would be brilliant, please. Unfortunately, Rose Reed from Brighton was due to be with us, but she's unwell today. So she was unable to travel this morning, but she has sent a message, so I'll just read that out for you guys. I'm so sorry that I can't be with you and hate letting you all down. I hope the day goes well, and I will be thinking of you all inspiring the next generation of WIFs today. We, of course, wish Rose better. So without further ado, let me welcome our panellists, and what a panel we have for you. So I mentioned earlier, obviously, one of these lovely ladies used to be my line manager, Michele. I used to work with at Charlton, and she was a great manager, but she has worked at West Ham United Football Club for 7 years now. She is the HR director there. She reports into the vice chairman and has the responsibility for all non-playing staff. The remit of Michele's role is to lead a team which covers the entire employee life cycle, including attraction, recruitment, and onboarding of new employees, employee compensation and benefits, performance management, learning and development, and employee relations. She is also the club's lead equality officer, responsible for leading the project management of the Premier League's equality standard. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you.
Next to Michele, we've got Sandra Garlick. Sandra works for Coventry City Football Club. She is a former solicitor. She joined Coventry City as a consultant supporting in-house legal and HR. Sandra is now a full-time staff member on the senior management team. More recently, Sandra has helped the club become a signatory to the FA's Football Leadership Diversity Code and implemented the club's code of practice. Sandra leads the safeguarding team and oversees safer recruitment at the club. Sandra is also the founder of Women Who, helping women in business to inspire others by becoming role models. She founded the Women Who Achieves Awards and online academy. She was awarded her MBE for services to women in business. I've got to remember that, Sandra, when I'm referring to you as Sandra MBE. Welcome, Sandra. And then at the end, we've got Fleur Robinson. Fleur is the Wrexham AFC CEO. She is an accomplished commercial leader with a huge passion for putting football at the heart of the community and making a positive difference to people's lives. Fleur joined Wrexham in June as new co-chairman Rob McElhaney. I should have practiced that before today.
It's taken me 9 months.
And Ryan Reynolds sought an experienced footballing person to help deliver an ambitious mission statement, growing the football club in tandem with targets for on-pitch success. Previously, Fleur spent more than 25 years at Burton Albion, working as commercial director as the Brewers rose up through the EFL. Fleur is also an elected FA Council member and BTEC ambassador. What a panel, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll go straight through into our questions. And Sandra, I'll come to you first. There'll be a lot of people here today with us, obviously, in the conference who are looking at a career within a football club. Where do they start?
Oh, big topic. I'll try and condense it down. I think that the thing is to research the roles you particularly want to do. And I'll give you a big clue here. Coventry City Football Club, we leave all our adverts on the website. So if you're looking at roles, you're looking at what type of things to do for a particular role, go and have a look at the job descriptions, see what you need, see what the person's specification is. But also you need work experience, and that's really, really hard to get. So it's talking to people, it's networking, it's getting involved, researching the club, finding out about opportunities. And don't be afraid to approach people and get your hands dirty, really, and starting at the bottom. It sounds awful, but a lot of our new roles are part-time casual roles, and it's a foot in the door. And I think, you know, it's looking at the whole club, looking at the roles that interest you, and maybe taking a part-time or a casual role to start with, and then having those conversations and seeing what you need to do to step up to the next level. Particularly at Coventry City, that's what we've done. We've developed a pathway through so you can actually join as a casual part-time member and then move on to other roles in the club.
That's really interesting, Sandra. You mentioned there obviously about the importance of people doing their research, really understanding what is actually required for the role. What would you say are the biggest mistakes you've seen from applications that you've received?
I see a lot of mistakes. I think one of the things is answer the job specification. And as women, we tend to hold back. We always think, and you hear the analogy with, and sorry gents in the room, I'm not having a go at you, but generally if a male coach, say, is going for a role, he'll really big himself up, really sell himself on the application form. Women don't tend to do that. We hold back and we say, oh, well, I can only do 50% of that role, I won't apply. Or women apply at the very last minute, or don't apply at all. Also, one of the other big mistakes I see is I get lovely covering letters coming in, and they tell me all about how wonderful Coventry City is, and how we've won the FA Cup back in 1987, and how we've got this great stadium, and how we, you know, they'd love to be associated with our club. I don't want to hear about how good we are. What I want to know is about you. And I want you to sell yourself, and that's one of the key things I think as women, we don't sell ourselves enough and put ourselves forward and shout about our achievements as well.
Thanks, Sandra. I think that's some really good key points in that. Michele, what would you say the biggest challenges have been for women starting out within the industry?
I think for a lot of women, and I take myself in this, is sometimes we suffer from imposter syndrome, where we doubt our ability to do things, and really that's a mindset. So for me in my career, I've set myself goals, I've really challenged myself, worked with, you know, really put myself forward for, volunteered for projects with senior management, and also kind of got a mentor in the field, networked, so things like Women in Football have been really useful, making myself visible, having those relationships. But one of the key things was about being persistent. You know, it wasn't necessarily quick, and it's not necessarily the route sometimes you want to go. But I have been frequently called tenacious in my career, so they're really important. And I think lastly, it's about feedback. You know, you really have to know where you need to grow and where you need to get better in order to be able to keep doing those next steps in your career.
That's great, Michele. So some of the things I'm hearing are about hard work, persistence, that resilience, and obviously not taking no for an answer, and being able to carry on forging through even if you are being told no. Fleur, does that resonate with your career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, obviously, I stayed in the same with the same club for over 25 years. So my journey has been slightly different to everybody else. But I think, you know, it's that you both touched on it. It's, you know, having a lack of confidence to really set your sights on your goals. And it's, you know, it's really key in terms of us doing that to make sure that we focus on what that goal is and not be so straightforward necessarily in how you achieve that sometimes. I think Sandra touched on other ways in, you know, to get there to achieve your goals.
Good, okay. Just in terms of, obviously, you mentioned there, you've obviously spent 25 years working for Burton Albion, and now you're at a new football club. Obviously, different challenges, working for different ownership in terms of American style, which is obviously something we're seeing a little bit more of in the UK. Do you think that opens up more opportunities for women?
Yeah, it certainly does, and I think, you know, it goes from, you know, the ethos of the owners, particularly in my case, which attracted me to the role in terms of that inclusivity and the work they want to do in the community, and making it, you know, making that difference, and giving the people, existing people and new people that join the business, plenty of opportunity, which we're already seeing. So it's really refreshing and, you know, good to see.
Good. Michele, just thinking back to our time together at Charlton, and I remember actually you were the first HR manager that they'd employed, having obviously gone from personnel to HR. Do you think that's had quite a significant impact in terms of bringing the industry as a whole to a better position around those corporate sort of functions that probably didn't exist before?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been in football nearly as long as you. And I've definitely seen going from a really antiquated personnel department where, you know, I remember when I first walked in at Charlton and we had files and files of applications from people that the previous person had kept. And it's, yeah, definitely it's moved on. There's a lot that's been done, particularly within the EDI field, in particular for women. And working at West Ham, one of the big things that attracted me to West Ham was working for Karen Brady as the vice chairman and really championing women in football. And I'm really lucky that because of that, half of Karen's senior leadership team are women. Wow. And that kind of resonates down to the rest of the club. And that means that I get to network with women every day, talking about our struggles, you know, really championing each other as well. So I think there's definitely been a big step in the last kind of 8, 9 or so years that I've been in football.
I think that's really helpful to know, especially for people in the room. But you touched on it there, that you've obviously got half of your senior leadership team being women, which is great, but I think is also not seen within the rest of the industry. If we've got employers in the room, what sort of advice can they take from a club like West Ham, who is essentially leading on that in terms of ensuring that, you know, there is that balance in terms of their leadership?
I think it starts with attraction as well. So I think there's a big misconception that to work in football, you have to really love playing football or watching football. And don't get me wrong, you have to be passionate, you have to be interested. It's not a 9-to-5 industry. But actually, you have to be really good at what you do. So all of my training and my learning and my work experience has been in human resources. And it's about applying that in the industry that you work for. So yeah, I think it starts with that. It's getting the messaging out locally as well in the community. One thing I do see that I resonate with Sandra really is that you don't get a lot of applications from women. So it's not even that women are falling out at interview stage. We're just not even getting the applications. So it's going out into the local communities and making people understand that working at football isn't about kicking a ball around. You know, we've got marketing departments, we've got sales departments. You know, these are people who are very good at what they do, and that's really what we're looking for. And that passion and interest in football has to be there, but it's not the forefront for me. It's about your skill set, your work experience, keeping up with the trends, and how you're going to bring that into the football industry.
Definitely think that's probably been the biggest learning curve for me coming into football near enough a decade ago, actually realising the plethora of roles that are out there. And I think people till this day probably still don't really know that. And I think getting that information out there is something really important for us as an organisation in terms of women in football to do, to educate actually how far those roles actually go. Sandra, as somebody who joined Coventry City first as a consultant, how would you say the industry has changed for women trying to get into it?
I think the industry is more open. There are more women in key roles, and I'm a big believer you can't be what you can't see. We need more women role models in football to actually talk about the roles they do, because traditionally I think women have gone into finance, administration, all those sort of roles that are more attracted for women, you know, PAs and things like that. Whereas now, you know, at Coventry we've got our head of academy physiotherapy is a woman, our head of player care is a woman. Our player liaison officer is a woman. So as on the senior management team myself, and working with the FA Leadership Diversity Code, which has been great actually, giving us targets and making us actively try and encourage more women. And I think that it's opening up the pathways for more women to see other women doing things and then say, well, if she can do it, actually, I can apply for that role. And it's really nice to see that change, but it is slow. And I'd love to see more women applying for coaching positions. We just don't get any applications. And it's really sad because, you know, women can do their UEFA B licence, but we don't get anybody applying for those jobs that ask for that. And it's such a shame. You know, and I think as women we need to be speaking more to more organisations, going out, and if we do hold a role in football that is non-traditional, actually going out there and talking about it publicly and trying to inspire others to follow in our footsteps.
That's great. And I think probably one of the most important things, and I think I'm hearing it from all of you guys, is that the organisations, the football clubs that you're working for are really behind that drive and that push to actually make the club more diverse, which is obviously really, really important. Fleur, as someone who's been in the industry for a long time, would you say you've experienced any negative feedback, obviously being somebody who's at the top of her game, running a football club from such a male-dominated area, especially given that Wrexham are obviously in the lower leagues and we know how antiquated those leagues can be?
Yeah, I've always said before that I've been quite fortunate. I think part of that's working in a family business, and you know I've not really had any negative feedback for some years really, but more recently is definitely now I'm going to boardrooms on my own quite often, literally the only person representing the football club. You know, I do see quite a bit, which is really sad. And so I think, you know, there's still, as we say across the board, there's an awful lot to do. You know, to highlight that really.
How do you deal with that negativity?
Well, I make myself known really. It's, you know, what else can you do?
It's a great answer.
And it's not every club, you know, but, you know, it has taken me by surprise. And I think probably for me, I've always gone to games with my father. So as a chairman, people have always naturally migrated to him anyway. So I've not really seen it before. I think now I'm, you know, that position really going, representing the club.
Yeah.
It's probably highlighted it more.
I think that's a great answer in terms of making yourself known. Mm-hmm. In terms of looking forward to the future, what do you think the industry holds in the next 15 years, say, for women working in it? Yeah,
well, I think, you know, we have seen change, you know, change is happening. As you've said, it's not happening quick enough. But listening to the session before this, you know, I'm a big believer that next generation is already changing or changed. I've got 2 young girls and their perception of things are totally different. So I hope, you know, that things will speed up by the next generation being more aware themselves, really.
Definitely agree with that. Michele, would you share in that sentiment? What do you think the next set of challenges are for women working in football?
I think particularly from my experience in HR, it's about automation and AI really. It's becoming increasingly important to understand HR analytics, what that can bring to the business, as well as, you know, lots of self-service, people having things in terms of staff benefits, all of that information to hand on them. And now we're, you know, coming out of COVID where everything was remote and literally everything went on its head overnight, and we had to change everything we did in HR, from learning, managing, performance management, communicating, engagement, socialising. Technology played a really big part of that, and it continues to as we're working in a hybrid fashion now, so reshaping that again. And I think touching on what Sandra said earlier is that there's some really established barriers that we have, and in football, in those roles that traditionally women go into. And I think that women need to transition, really. And that, for me, is about upskilling and being mobile and being really tech savvy. Mm-hmm. They're really the areas where I really don't see a lot of women. So within our kind of content departments, our marketing departments, that's where we're really crying out for a lot of women on the technology side of things. So I think it's really important to keep up to date with those trends. But again, going back to seeing how that applies to the industry that you work in. You know, West Ham, like most other clubs, are global brands, but we're actually only an SME. So we don't want to be things to be completely robotic. You know, we have a family vibe about the club. So it's getting that technology right where people don't feel like they're talking to a machine, but actually, you know, you are dealing with hundreds of applications. A lot of them are fans. So you have to be really careful about the way you communicate with people who are fans who want to work for the club that they love. So, yeah, I think for me, technology and the way that that's changing is the next challenge, and how women make sure that they're keeping in line with that.
I think that's some great advice in terms of obviously wanting to be ahead of the game. And actually, a question that I'd probably ask to all of you when you're thinking about what sort of advice you'd give to anybody who wants to come in and work for a football club, what would you say is the one piece of advice that would be really, really key in terms of being successful in getting a role with the football club? Michele?
I think in any role, but I think for me it's about long life learning. So in order for me to be successful and to climb that career ladder, I learn in lots of different ways every day, whether that be formal or informal learning, and really having that new information, staying in trend with what's going on, has really empowered me to get on in my career and kind of do what I want to do. And you never stand still. Football is very, very dynamic. Every day is different, and you have to adapt very, very quickly. You have to be very flexible, and that means, keeping on top of what's going on and being able to do that.
Some solid advice. Thanks, Michele. Sandra?
I think be yourself. Too often we go into a male-dominated environment and think we've got to be the macho, we've got to be just like them, and we haven't. And I think, I went into that football club very much myself, very much with being myself and staying true to my own values as well. And football isn't a 9-to-5 job. We know that, you will work Saturdays, you will work evenings, you will work weekends, and we don't have the traditional breaks like other companies have. And, and I stuck to my values when I went into the football club, and I've sort of helped to mould a change in culture because of that. And that for me was important. So I think, my advice to anybody that is moving into the football environment or into a more male role within the football environment is to continue with your own values and also to be yourself.
That's great. Thank you. Fleur?
Yeah, I think we've touched on it already, is to sort of look at those opportunities and make sure you take them, and even if it's something you're not sure about, get involved, and at any opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Would you say people are best doing any formal qualifications? Are there specific degrees out there that you'd encourage them to go out and pursue?
Yeah, I've always been very pro education, but I think again, the football environment, there's so much available nowadays that education is great, but it's not the be all and end all in terms of getting a career in football, depending on obviously what role that is that you want to do.
I'd agree with that actually, and I think in the last session we had just around shoehorning yourself into I want to work for a football club or a football organisation, and actually taking on a degree or a course or whatever it might be that's so specific that actually if that doesn't work and it really lets you down, which obviously is negatively impacting you. So I think football education is important, but actually it's not the be all and end all, like you say. Women in Football, obviously, as an organisation, we do a lot to support the industry in terms of women wanting to get into the industry or where things have maybe gone wrong. What would you say in terms of us as a network we can do for women wanting to get into the industry or women who are currently in the industry? I'll start with you, Sandra.
I think it's perhaps having more regional networks, maybe, getting women who are in existing roles to talk about their role, how they got into football, the role they do now, and building more of a network rather than, I know there's lots of events and things, but opportunities like this to come together, to actually talk to each other. The noise level over lunch was phenomenal. Even in the queues coming in today, it was phenomenal because we were all talking to each other. We were sharing our stories. And I think that's what we need to do more of, share our stories of how we got into football or what we want to achieve from football.
Michele?
Yeah, I think building on that, definitely the networking, definitely sharing information, sharing ideas, and then being able to develop those further. I think also kind of celebrating the successes that we have as women in football, and also challenging discrimination as well. So I think those are the things that women in football can definitely help with.
That's great, thank you. Fleur?
Yeah, I agree with Sandra again. You know, we talked previously about regional sessions, and I think, you know, specific sessions around certain areas within the industry as well, from people that are in those positions. So I think it's a great, what you're doing now is absolutely fantastic, but if we can sort of drill that down into regionals, it would be great.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for plugging Women in Football. We're just going to pivot slightly and take some questions from our audience. I'm sure you're all keen to hear a little bit more from our panel. I think we've got some roving mics just at the back. So if you have got any questions, please put your hand up. If you want to tell us your name and which organisation you work for.
Yep, I'm Alex Eckhout. I'm from the Premier League. And I think it was really interesting what you were saying, Michele, about wanting to recruit top talent and kind of dispel the myth that you have to be a football expert to work in football. Interested to know from all of you, actually, what kind of industries you recruit from. Is it from other sport or is it from outside of sport?
It's a really good question. Who wants to kick us off?
I will. A variety. It really depends on the role and what we're looking for at that specific time. So not just necessarily football, not necessarily sport. For myself, it's, as I said, it's about looking at that skill set and that work experience. For me, you know, if we want to have a really good head of communications, we want somebody who's been a really good head of communications. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to do it in football. Don't get me wrong, you have to understand the landscape. But yeah, for me, it's more about that skill set and really getting people to take football as a business quite seriously. So that's kind of what we're aiming to do at West Ham.
That's great. Sandra?
Very similar. We look at the skill set of the individual, but also we've taken on quite a few people recently with absolutely no football experience at all. Recently we took on a CRM executive. We wanted more their experience in CRM management, not necessarily that they've worked in CRM in football, and we've taken on quite a few opportunities recently that haven't had any football experience, but their actual skill set very much fits the role they've applied for. Plus we take on apprentices as well. It's something that we're really passionate about, enabling young people to come straight from education into an apprenticeship. We have apprenticeships throughout the club, you know, in non-football roles as well as, you know, football coaching roles. So that's quite nice that we can give those different routes into football.
Fleur?
Yeah, I think it's getting the best people, isn't it, for those roles, and it's a real balance as well, having that those new eyes coming in from different industries with those different skill sets, but equally having that balance of people that understand football, and we've all touched on it, that, you know, it isn't 9 till 5, it's nothing like 9 till 5, and you don't appreciate that until you're actually in it, and you're in it. So it's having that balance.
That's great. Alex, thank you for your question. Anybody else? Hi. Mike there.
My name is Claudia. I'm from the AFL, so Australian Rules Football, a little bit different. So my question is a bit more about transferring from other sports into your football, and especially in more senior executive roles. So I'm the CEO of AFL Europe here, but I've worked in the academy, head of women's football, and that in Australia and AFL, and in the roles on the football side of things rather than the business side, so finance, HR, etc., where they are asking for experience in football. How can people, you know, transferring from other sports, I guess, try and get their resumes and their applications seen when they don't necessarily have the experience in that sport or the networks and connections and a name in roles? I know for the Premier League at the moment, there's a role in like academy operations. I've seen a few in like head of women's football or director of women's football in clubs. Yeah, would you consider, I guess, transfer from other sports and experience in, you know, similar roles?
Fleur, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and it's again getting the best people in terms of what their resume looks like. Bringing knowledge from other sports, growing sports as well. The options are there to look at, and it's having that open mind in terms of that recruitment process.
Sandra?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult when you're wanting to transfer into a role when you haven't got the qualifications for that role. Sometimes we want to actually see that you've done some study in football, depending on the role. But other roles, it's just really selling yourself and selling those cross-transferable skills that can apply from a different sector in sport to football. And, as I said, as women, we don't often do that, but, everybody's got a skill set and those skills are transferable in a lot of occasions. So unless it's a specific football coaching role where you need the coaching qualifications, then, performance analysis, for example. I put out so many roles for performance analysis, but never see any applications from women. Now, women are good at data, women are good at performance analysis, they're just not putting themselves forward, but it's, you can do that in a variety of sports. So, there are roles there where those skills can be transferred across.
I think that's a really good point, Sandra, actually, just in terms of those transferable skills, but also being realistic, I think. I think football sometimes has a tendency to be quite elitist in terms of I need to have somebody who's been at a football club and has had that experience, whereas actually there's a lot we can take from other sports which might be a little bit more detailed in terms of these other fields. So I definitely think now people who are responsible for recruitment are definitely not closed off to those opportunities that sit outside of direct football. Michele, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of echoing what's been said earlier really is that it's definitely about transferable skills. It's really understanding the role, so understanding the job description, really looking at that person's specification and really tailoring your application and really knowing and researching the company and what they're about and making sure that comes through in your application and then taking that further at interview. So I don't think it's necessarily going into a senior role within a football club that you have to have that direct experience. You may have to start at a lower league. I went in a championship league and worked there for about 18 months before I worked in the Premiership. But you definitely, looking at recruitment, you definitely have to make sure that you're ticking all of those boxes in terms of what the club are asking for from that skill set perspective.
Great question, thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Mia. I play for West Ham under 21s, and the performance analysis that you mentioned, Sandra, that's actually something I'm really interested in. And what would you say is, because for me, I wouldn't know where to go, what to do, what qualifications you need. So what you said is quite reassuring in the sense of you don't really need an exact qualification, but if you're looking at an application from someone who wants to go into that role, what would you say is like the standout thing that would put them in good stead for getting the job?
Sandra?
I only caught part of the question, sorry.
So she plays for West Ham at the moment,
Yep.
and she's interested in performance analysis eventually when she gets to that point in her career. She found it interesting that you said, obviously, you don't necessarily need the qualification for that. What sort of advice would you give to somebody who hasn't necessarily got that qualification?
I think it's getting experience. So, what you said earlier, maybe starting at a lower club or maybe a club which is sort of what I call a semi-professional club, where they might have opportunities just part-time, just to get some experience, because they're always looking for people. And it might be that you have to get your hands dirty, as I said, and go and volunteer. Just say, I'd love to come and volunteer and do a bit of this, or could I shadow? Because quite often I'll get applications from people saying, I'm really interested in doing this role. Can I come and do some shadowing for a few weeks? And we try and facilitate that where we can. And it's just good to find out what actually the route is into that role. Now, performance analysis, yes, you do have to have some experience, and we do take graduates where we can, but there are other routes in. So it's about talking to people already doing the role and saying, how did you get into that role? And what would your suggestions be for me? Where should I go? Do I need to get that qualification? Where can I get some experience? Can you help me? Because too often we don't ask for help.
That is very true. I think just to add to that, I think you're in a really unique position being a player, obviously, for the under-21s at West Ham. And I think the journey of that can start with the analysis of your own game, and actually working with the staff members who are obviously there to support yourself, and really understanding what it entails for them to do. And actually, you mentioned that you don't currently have a qualification, but they might be able to share what their route into those roles have been, and being able to apply that for yourself. And actually, like Sandra has said, shadowing those sessions, which obviously can go into quite a lot of depth at the moment, and being able to understand that a little bit better, volunteering to work with the first team if they'll have you. But I think you're in a really unique position where you've got an opportunity there that you can grab. Thank you for your question. Anybody else? We've got plenty of time, which I know hasn't been the theme for the rest of the day. So if you guys have any questions, that's great. If not, I will plough on with the ones I've got as well. Go ahead.
Hi there, my name is Sarah. I'm from the Palace for Life Foundation. All of you sort of touched on that not enough women are applying for roles in sport, especially within football. So I'm just wondering if any of you or your football clubs have made a pledge to the Get On Side campaign. And if not yet, do you think this is something you could offer to help more girls and women get into senior positions like yourselves at football clubs?
I think West Ham had 8 pledges.
Yeah.
Some of them I thought, that's a bit, you should be doing that anyways. But saying that, it's good to see clubs sort of grabbing onto that and actually saying, we are doing this anyway, but we're going to be really vocal about the fact that we're doing it, because actually what it then gives is for people to be signposted to some of those things that are happening, which is what we want. So tell us about your 8 pledges, West Ham.
So what we've been doing a lot at West Ham, particularly from the EDIC, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion perspective, is really working together. So working with the foundation, working with our women's team and the club, and really making sure that we're going out in the community and making ourselves visible. So that's within Newham, so it's making sure that we're understanding what is preventing women from applying, really changing that messaging out there. As Sandra said, we also offer apprenticeships. We offer internships, graduates, people can also move within departments and do work shadowing, and we also have an internal learning and development department, and we have mentoring specifically for women at the club. So there's lots of different things that we're doing to try and engage with lots of different women across from the community, but also kind of internally as well.
That's great, thank you. Sandra, I don't think Coventry City have pledged to our Get On Side campaign. If they were going to, what would the pledge look like?
We, despite being what we call a perceived big club, we're a very small club. We've got a very, very skeleton staff. But I'm always encouraging the club to look at other ways of doing things. So we will be looking into pledges. But, we want to be out there more. We want to be more visible. We want to be doing more to encourage people from diverse backgrounds to get into football and to apply to the club. And I think that's still the biggest thing. We want people to apply because they're not. It's very much still young males applying for roles in football, and we want to change that. I'm not saying it's not diverse. We've got a very diverse recruitment, but it's traditionally males. We want to get more, and we are working with the football leadership diversity stuff that we're doing and the data. All our roles that we advertise, we put on the football leadership careers portal, for example, as are a lot of clubs now. That's a great way to look as well. But no, we will get into pledges. I pledge here now, we will get into pledges.
That's great, Sandra. We'll come back to you for that pledge. Fleur, similar to you guys, really. What are Wrexham thinking,
absolutely.
doing?
So no pledges at the moment, but there definitely will be. It's definitely on the long list of lots of things we've got to do.
Okay.
It's obviously early days, changing the whole concept really in terms of how the club operates and moving forward to make sure it's an inclusive and an open environment. So, and again, looking at the local community, making sure that the foundation is working alongside the club to make sure we're reaching out into every area that we need to.
Good.
So there will be pledges in the future, in the near future.
We'll come back to you as well. That's a really good question. And for full transparency, Birmingham City also haven't officially pledged the Get On Side campaign. But I mentioned earlier in another session that we're just in the middle of setting our 5-year strategy. And actually, what we've been trying to do is be really intentional about some of these things. It's so easy to sort of jump on the bandwagon because, you know, something's being called out. And actually, as WIF, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to call the industry out and trying to get the commitment from the industry to do better and do more. Which obviously forms part of everything we're doing at the moment. So that will also come. Have there been pledges from Crystal Palace?
Hopefully, I will be taking on the girls' quality lead, and I'll be going straight to the club and making sure we do a pledge very soon. So that is my aim, and my pledge to you as well.
That's brilliant, thank you. Any other questions?
Amy McDonald, I'm also a token Scots person, probably here the second one apart from Lynn, from Rangers Football Club. Michele, I just wanted to ask you, I guess that there's been a considerable shift in West Ham in the player focus as well as the staff and well-being, which is maybe part of your influence. And I was just wondering, out of curiosity, if you could maybe pinpoint 3 things that you feel has really been part of that to be able to move the club forward in different aspects as we move to a corporate, a more kind of corporate environment within a football club?
Yeah, so it all kind of started when we moved to London Stadium, which was about 6 years ago now, and really having the support of the senior leadership team, so particularly Karen Brady. So she's very much behind the people strategy and understanding that we have to align our non-footballing strategy, so our business strategy, with what we want to do on the playing field. So it's about aligning those values and echoing what we want to do there with what we're doing behind the scenes. So, you know, when we say that we want to be kind of top 6, you know, really vying for Champions League, etc. That means that has to be echoed in our recruitment. So it needs to make sure that we are employing the best people. So really looking at that strategy, how we employ, what we're doing about that, ensuring that's a diverse workforce as well. So ensuring that we've got, you know, as we were talking about earlier, is that it's important to have people who understand football, but it's also really important that you get new blood in from different corporate backgrounds, so that we've got new ideas and we're generating those new ideas and we're doing things differently. So really, for me, the key thing has definitely been about having that senior leadership support. Without that, it doesn't take off. People don't believe in it, and therefore it just wilters and it falls by the wayside. So that's been really, really important, and that making sure that from a people perspective that we're looking at everything really. And again, in football, it's not 9 to 5, as we were saying. You know, everybody knows here it's evening, it's weekends, and it's really supporting people's well-being from their physical and their mental health. So really ensuring that that's been really, really important for us, that people feel supported, that we have flexible working, that we have family-friendly policies, and that we don't just talk about it, but we actually do it, we live and we breathe it. So yeah, those values are really important as well, and that they're coming through in your policies, and you're not contradicting what you're saying, but you're living something very different. So it's very key that those things are very much aligned.
I think that's a really good point, Michele, and I think Monique touched on it in the first session in the morning, just around how far behind as an industry we are in terms of those policies that are supporting, you know, working mums and everything else. And I think there are clubs out there who are really leading on that, and it's for the rest of the industry really to follow on from there. There was a question at the front, a couple of questions at the front. That's a good segue.
Claudia, I work freelance for the Premier League and for the EFL. So I had my first child after having worked in the industry for about 8 years. I was in a great position where after having my first child, I decided to go freelance. It was something that could work for me and my family. But understanding that obviously doesn't work for a lot of people, you know, they need to go back into more of a full-time role. You know, what advice do you guys have? Fleur, you said obviously you have two children. You know, what did you do when you had your children? How were you able to kind of have that balance? And I think, as you just said then, you know, what are clubs doing now to allow working mums and working dads as well, you know, to have a little bit more flexibility around, you know, leaving an hour early to pick up the kids? And, you know, whilst I think that I think there's maybe historically been a bit of a thing around, especially when there've been more men in leadership positions around, you just want to get out of the office and you don't want to work those hours and continue to do it, which is obviously not the case. We all know how expensive childcare is, and sometimes it's just not feasible for you to be having somebody else going and picking up your children. So I think, what are clubs doing to kind of make it more attractive to working mums who do want to work, who are happy to put in the hours and to put in, but maybe slightly different hours and things like that.
Fleur, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, I think for me, from my experience, I think, again, I was very fortunate working in the family business, that, I've been able to sort of work around work and family as well. And my children have grown up within that environment. But having my children has made me realise and appreciate, that not everybody is privileged enough to have that opportunity. So, it's certainly made a difference in my way of thinking when we're putting jobs out for recruitment, what that looks like and how that can work going forward. So, it is a balance, but, hopefully, I don't know what you in terms of what you both do at your clubs, but for me going forward, we look at that and have that flexibility within reason, obviously, for whatever role that is, and whether it's for mums or the fathers as well, and have that family time, which is so important to all of us, particularly in the environment we work in.
That's Fleur. Sandra?
I think our club is quite progressive, but also we have a lot of trust in our staff. So when I say we don't work 9 to 5, it's in some cases we don't work 9 to 5 because we've got other things going on. So it wouldn't be unusual for one of the chaps in the office to leave at 3 to go and pick his kids up from school, but he might have been in since 7 o'clock, or he might have done a match the night before. So there's a recognition of that, and it is very much on trust. People arrive when they arrive and they leave when they leave. They come to do the job. As long as they do the job, their hours don't really matter. We have women that work part-time, because they want to be there to take their children to school, collect children from school. They want to work term time only, whatever that is. I myself, I'm a carer for an elderly parent, so it's at the other end of the spectrum. We haven't got young children, but we might have elderly parents. Again, the club recognises that. They've been very flexible with me recently when I've been having to base myself at home, but that hasn't been an issue as long as I get the work done. And I think clubs are becoming more progressive, any organisation is becoming more progressive about that, especially since COVID, because we were all based at home, and now we've all discovered Zoom and Teams. It just makes it so different, and our academy tends to still hold a lot of their meetings now online, which allows people to have so many days working from home, which was unheard of pre-pandemic.
Michele?
Yeah, I think I would echo that. I mean, before the pandemic, we all worked in the office. We were there from 9 in the morning till 5, and then we were doing evenings and weekends. And I think COVID for us as a club has actually allowed us to have that flexibility, which is the one thing everybody wanted, regardless of their age and their circumstances at home. And again, as Sandra was saying, it really is built on trust. It's not about what people are doing, so it's not playing Big Brother and watching people what are doing, it's really the outcome. So what are people producing? And as long as the work is produced when it needs to be done, then we do trust people to get on with it. And I think it's about, for me personally, I've got a young child. I came into football with a young child, and I've always found it to be very, very supportive. A lot of the people that I work with are men, so whilst there's a lot of women, there are a lot of men, and actually they're dads as well, and they understand that. And even before COVID, I found it was always very, very flexible when people needed to do things, and very similar to your experience, Fleur. We are very small, we're very family orientated. You're probably getting on average teams of about 10 to 12 people, and you're flexible because people understand. So, in my experience, football can be seen to be quite hard when you look at the way that managers are treated, but actually, when you go behind the scenes, we're actually very fair with staff and very flexible. And my experience has been amazing. I've asked that question more about other people wanting to, you don't want people to be put off, as I think we talked about earlier.
We don't want people to be put off, the idea of starting a family because they think it's going to have that massive break in their career. I've also been really fortunate in having already gained that trust when I then went off to have my child, that I've been able to be flexible. I've been able to do that. So I think that it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and I think
as
for
you
us
say,
it's
that
been
the
about
leagues and the clubs have been
working with organisations as well, again getting that out there, advertising flexible roles, flexible hours, and working with recruiters who are very much working with women and getting women back into the workforce and understanding that, because that, again, it's that perceived that I can't do this because I'm going to be working too many hours and I can't give that to my job and to my family. So I think, again, it's really important that people understand that.
It's really good to hear from you guys as leaders of your organisations that actually, although football is a really demanding industry in terms of your time, there's also that understanding around flexibility and actually being able to give back to your employees. So it's really, really good to hear. I'll take one more question.
So my name's Katrina. I actually work at Buckinghamshire Council, so a completely different industry to what you guys are all in. But I am studying a postgraduate in football business here at UCFB, which is what drew me here today, because I really do want to get into this industry. And I'm wondering, with the topic of corporate social responsibility expanding in the way it is with policies and things like from the FA down, etc., UEFA, FIFA, do you see roles opening up in the industry for people who have perhaps never dipped their feet in the football industry but have a wealth of experience from public sector and other activities that would fulfill those?
Anyone specific or the whole panel?
To all of you.
So I came from public sector. I did all of my training in public sector through CIPD, and I decided that I wanted to go to a blue chip company, and I saw that there was an advert for Cheltenham, my local club. And really going back to the question earlier, it was really about transferable skills, and what they were looking for at the time was going from personnel to HR, was somebody who understood the legal background in HR, understand those policies and procedures. Particularly, I worked with schools, so I knew about safeguarding, and again, working with academies, and it was just really tying the two together. So that actually helped me in really good stead. And I don't think I'm out of line by saying that actually sometimes in HR and football it can be a little bit behind the curve. So actually that there are some things that you can take from public sector that are ahead in terms of London Living Waiting and their policies and what they're doing, exactly what you'll find that maybe lower league football clubs really need. So I don't think it's beyond their realms of possibility at all.
100% agree with that. Sandra?
I didn't come from a football background. I came from sort of a legal background. I was a solicitor, had my own solicitor's practice, and it was just because they came to me and asked me to give some legal advice on how to sack a manager that I got my first taste of football. And it was a dream come true for me, because when I did my degree, my law degree, I actually took the sport elective, but there was just no openings for women in football at that time, or very few. And I just hung around the football club. I was a fan. I hung around the football club. And the more I got involved, the more I saw the opportunities that could open up for me. And I think we heard this morning about just asking the question, do you need any more? Do you need anybody to do that role? And it was just sort of sidling my way in a way, at that time. But yes, absolutely. We don't, as I said earlier, we don't look for traditional football people to come in. And if somebody came to us and said, I've got this experience and I really see an opening there, we'd look at it. But I'm not saying everybody write to me saying I can see a space in your football club, but it's great. And can I just add at this point, and I didn't say this earlier, I know that we're progressively changing at Coventry, because we now have to queue for the ladies' loo.
At least you haven't got menus in it at the training ground, the ladies' loo.
Sorry?
I said at least you haven't got men using it.
No, we put a sign on to stop them. We had to stop the players using it.
Good. Fleur?
Yeah, and I think for us, more recently, we've sort of had about 5 senior hires in over the last few months, and only one of them has had experience in football previously. So I think that obviously, again, we've already sort of touched on it already, but there's opportunities out there, and it's not always about having that experience within the game.
think it's a good point you mentioned there about CSR, because sustainability is really at the top of the agenda in terms of what can football do, and a few organisations have popped up in terms of wanting to help the industry get a little bit greener. And I think, like with everything else, you know, football probably isn't at the forefront of that sustainability conversation, and it's definitely something we can affect. And I know Premier League are quite intentional about what they're trying to do, and obviously it's always a little bit more straightforward for those bigger clubs to invest in that resource. I was actually talking to Veolia just the other day, because we're looking at our waste management contract going forward, and actually they do quite a lot to support that. And actually, if somebody is going from that organisation to support a football club, if they're looking for either a sustainability officer, a hybrid role, or a secondment, or anything like that, I think the possibilities are probably quite endless. But it's thinking about things like that isn't traditionally thought of as a role that exists in the industry, but actually adding what you're good at to the industry to make it a little bit better. So I think that's a really, really good question, and probably a good point to end on. We are intending on giving you guys your full break. I know you haven't had any full breaks as yet, because obviously we've been running over. It's plain to see, I think, that women definitely belong within the football industry. It's plain to see that there's obviously a lot of potential out there, but there's a lot of openness in terms of making the industry a little bit more diverse. Thank you to our brilliant panel for answering all those questions so well. It's been really good to hear from you. It's been inspiring, even for me. Thank you for speaking so honestly and openly, and giving your time to be with us today. I know you guys will be around, so if anybody didn't get an opportunity to ask any questions, I'm around. They'll also be around. We'll go and we'll grab a coffee, which is on the yellow concourse, so back out where we were in the morning. We've got a keynote session in here at 4:00, and it will start at 4:00 because it is with Emma Hayes, and I know everybody's really looking forward to that. I actually think I deserve a prize today for being the only one who's on time. But thank you guys so much.